Okay, perfect. So are we good to go?
We're good to go. Yeah, it's all yours, Ruthan Badd.
Okay. Hey guys, this is your High Fist here with another juicy video, probably the juiciest video you've seen on this channel. Not only is this the first Ruthan Badd collab on this channel, but we've also got two experts whom I'll come to, whom I believe have never been in the same video together where it was just the two of them speaking to another YouTuber. I might be wrong there, but I will be marketing this as a Ruthan Badd exclusive nonetheless. So guys, as you know, the Malaztube books are all about great duos, Quick Ben and Kalam, Fiddler and Hedge, Stormy and Gessler. So in that tradition, the YouTube Malaztube duo of that sort of magnitude is, of course, Dr. Philip Chase and Dr. A.P. Canavan. They are true literary scholars. Between the two of them, they have enough PhDs to start their own university. So I am extremely honored and happy to have them on this channel. Philip and AP, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And my question is, which one of us is Dancer and which one is Kellenvid, I guess? Or
that's for you to figure out, Philip.
Okay.
Just give him the evil one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that narrows it down. Well,
go on.
Ruthan, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me on the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of your videos, your analysis. It really is great to be here, to be able to speak to you. But I do have one question. So you're the High Fist. How exactly did you get into fisting?
It was because I was high, AP. You should know that.
Oh, dear.
I was just going to say, guys, Philip is a gentleman and a scholar, and AP is a scholar, but AP did that for me. So guys, we are here to discuss The Healthy Dead, which is one of my favorite novellas ever. It is possibly my favorite Erikson story. So I personally connect with the stuff in this in the story because of personal experiences, because of personal tastes, blah, blah, blah. I've always had a special connection with this book. Whenever Bauchelain opens his mouth in this book, I just have a mental orgasm, just the way that every bit of satire that Erikson hits, just the way the story starts, that lifestyle fascists would probably not like this. This to me is just a perfect mixture of zany humor with very, very sort of stinging political satire. So maybe, Philip, we should come to you first. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, everything you just said. And I love the part you just talked about. Lifestyle fascists will go blind, actually, by reading this story, which starts the whole thing. I mean, there you go. This is a satire, folks. So in case you didn't, you wouldn't get the hint later on, boom, here it is. And for me, of the three stories that were collected in the first volume of the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach novellas, this one, The Healthy Dead, was the one where I felt like the satirical elements were just central to the story and to the message of the story, which is, on the one hand, it is about, this sort of, as AP mentioned earlier in the video on my channel, it's this sort of new agey kind of obsession with health, but also there's this idea of self-righteousness. And this is something I think that in a gentler way is a very important part of the Malaztube Book of the Fallen. This is the invitation not to judge too hastily, is something that we talk about a lot when we talk about the books in the Malaztube Book of the Fallen. You'll have characters that you meet and you initially might not like, but then later on you find out other facets to them. We talk about this a lot. And here, I think, is Erikson with a really good satire in a much sharper way, making a similar point about righteousness and our tendency, from whatever particular political affiliation we might have, our tendency in our age, for whatever, is it the internet? Is it, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about that forever, but it seems to me that we have a tendency to judge first and investigate later. And that sort of, why do people like that? I don't know. People have always enjoyed blaming other people for something or other and getting into a self-righteous rage about something. But you have some characters here who are just over the top in terms of their judging other people. And the hypocrisy of that, of course, is that what we learned that these characters, many of them have their own checkered backgrounds as well. And in fact, it's a funny thing. The bigger the sinner, the more pure the saint, it seems almost. So
Always.
right? So that's my broad take on it. There's obviously a lot more to it.
AP, would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, before I talk about what Philip was just bringing up, what's interesting is the first book, Blood Follows, is obviously a parody of that murder mystery, the detective storyline, as well as the master-servant relationship. The second one, The Leaves of Laughter's End, is a parody of the ghost story on the ship. It's all of those naval horror stories that we remember from 18th and 19th century literature, those sorts of stories. I think this is the beginning of where this sort of sequence of novellas moves beyond parodying certain story forms and moves into parodying social satire. So it's a movement away from a particular story form into something that is actually probably easier for a lot of people to get into, because if you haven't read 18th or 19th century ship-based ghost stories, The Leaves of Laughter's End mightn't hit quite the same way. If you're not a fan of Jeeves and Wooster and those sorts of stories, or of the Agatha Christie murder mysteries, Blood Follows mightn't hit the same way. But I think in this day and age, we're all aware of a friend, an acquaintance who has come round to harangue us about our diet, the type of exercise that we do, our bad habits, and they will stand there in all sense of moral superiority and harangue us about something. And then they will do something like get into their SUV that they drive in the middle of an urban area where you don't need a four-wheel drive off-road vehicle in order to drive to the shops. And they don't see the hypocrisy in their stance that we all have. And we do it to other people as well, because we don't see our own hypocrisy when we harangue people. And we can recognize that in this story, that this is poking fun at all of us, at this smug moral superiority that we sometimes assume, often unknowingly, when we lecture someone else. And in typical Eriksonian fashion, it's making fun of an objective thing, the health fascists, or these sort of fitness fascists, as well as then asking the reader, are you immune from this criticism too? So it's a lot of fun. It's a highly engaging novella, and the parody is dialed up to 11. The absurdism is dialed up to 11. The dark humor in it is so sharp. It is the blackest of sharp blades cutting down through all of us. It's wonderfully written.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And in addition to the points that the two of you have raised, or rather in response to the points that the two of you have raised, the question I would like to ask both of you is, so my take is that this story and why it's so special to me is because it asks two fundamental questions. The first is, what is the nature of humanity? I know that sounds pretentious for a sort of novella where there are hints of bestiality and necrophilia and all kinds of debauchery, right? But that's the first thing. There's a pretty sort of recurring theme that comes throughout the stories, where Bauchelain is intent on proving that human nature is at its core sort of I guess in international relations, which I teach, there's always been this debate of the sort of the Machiavellian Hobbesian view of human nature and the more idealist view of human nature, the realist and idealist views. And typically you tend to find Erikson's writing falling much more on the idealist side, where it's all about the underlying compassion and morality and sort of the goodness of your heart or whatever at the surface. But here is explicitly a case of Bauchelain trying to disprove Erikson's thesis in the 10 books. He is trying to prove that humanity is at its heart evil or selfish, And the second important question this asks, which is equally important, particularly in today's political context, I would say, is a benevolent leader better than a tyrant? Or as in, is a righteous leader, self-righteous leader, an idealist leader, is he or she or they necessarily better than, I'm a third world savage guy, so please sort of excuse my pronouns. So, right? So is that necessarily worse than a tyrant? And I think in both these questions, Erikson really uses even the absurdist humor to constantly make us think of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And he does it sometimes with these, even the names of the characters, which are almost Dickensian, I think, particularly in this story. King Necrotus, is that his name? Yeah, I think so, right? I mean,
Necrotus the Nile or something.
Yeah, Necrotus the Nihil. Yeah. I mean, that's Erikson using a very blunt instrument there, very deliberately, I think. Or his brother who takes over the fitness fanatic. What was his name? I forget. Macrotus or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, starts with M.
But the names of the vices in here, it's almost allegorical at times as well, isn't it? I mean, I never thought I would see allegory in the Malazan book, but you have to say that the sloth shows up, and gluttony,
sloth,
and
corpulence, vice, lust.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they have their own names as well, but is it allegorical? I guess we can talk about that. So I love all of this stuff put together in one, and I think you hit on something really important there, Ruthan Badd, in terms of the sharpness of the message here, and what we can take from it. Absolutely. So yeah, I would agree with you.
Well, about the essence of a dictator, if you think someone who can be very well-meaning, and you go, this is what is best for everyone. But if we think in terms of diet, the human digestive system is designed biologically to be omnivorous, both meat and vegetable matter. And I believe both you individuals are vegetarian.
Correct.
I'm a complete carnivore, AP. I don't eat vegetables.
Oh, you're
yeah.
Okay. But if you think biologically, the human digestive system has evolved to be omnivorous, both plant and animal matter. That's biologically what we have. But if we ate only meat, that wouldn't necessarily be good for our system, because it's taking one aspect of something that's in balance and exaggerating it to one point. Eating only vegetable matter, well, we still would need to, we couldn't eat the way that cows do, eat just raw vegetable matter all the time, because we don't have the digestive system that can cope with it. So we have this, what my mom used to always say to me was, everything in moderation, that there has to be a balance. And we can see this when it's applied to the concept of leadership, where a benevolent dictator is a very efficient form of government. And if they are benevolent and if they are talented, you can have a wonderful society. The problem is, who succeeds them? It's great having a benevolent dictator who's all wise and all knowing. But as soon as they're gone, if that's your system, who takes over? Are they going to be as wise and as benevolent as the previous person? Right. Within democracy, and democracy has a lot of strengths. It allows us all to engage in what we think should be the best for the country. But is the difficulty with democracy as a system is not everyone voting on every issue is going to be equally informed. We all have different opinions. We all want what is best for our country. But because we all have different ideological positions, because we all have different levels of experience, because we have different levels of knowledge, what we think personally is best for our country may differ radically from the person living next door. And so if we're both voting on it, the person next door is saying, but I'm voting for what is best for our country. And you're going, but I'm voting what's best for our country. And they are ideologically opposed, or they are mutually, I've just forgotten the word, mutually exclusive positions.
Yeah.
Is either one of those people acting in bad faith? No, but that is the issue with democracy. It is not that democracy is bad, but that is the weakness of it. Whereas the weakness of having a tyrant is, well, if you have a tyrant, it is what the old expression, one man, one vote, and I'm the man. You know, it's that you're at the mercy of one person's whim. But in a democracy, if you're in a minority position, you're at the mercy of the majority. And we can see how that can play out on various issues. It's a complex, nuanced position. Democracy is a terrible system of government, but it's the least terrible one that we've ever discovered.
Yeah.
I like how one of the best scenes in the story is when Bauchelain is trying to almost explain precisely that to Rhys, and Bauchelain is sort of he's trying to convince Rhys that this is not just a distasteful thing, but that it's a force of evil. This whole idea of a benevolent leader, this whole idea of someone who has values and someone who wants to do good for society, that itself is a threat to civilization. And Rhys is like, what are you talking about? How can compassion be a threat to civilization? How can that be? And Bauchelain breaks it down. Bauchelain systematically breaks down how one leads to the other, and this leads to that, and whatever leads to final contempt. And pretty soon you are trying to impose your own unique code of morality as the greater good on everyone else. So AP, you did put that eloquently, but I'm sorry, all I could think of was Bauchelain's words in your voice.
Well, and to be fair, that's why Erikson is the author and I'm the person behind the scenes every once in a while scribbling notes in the margin. You know, I have no pretensions that I could ever write as well as Erikson.
Well, you were pretty good on Crackpot Trail, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to Crackpot Trail eventually. We got to do that one.
Philip, I wanted to ask you what you sort of thought about the nature of humanity itself, because one thing you keep kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say banging on, but one major theme that you constantly touch on when you cover Erikson's work is the sort of the compassion and empathy side of it. So what did you think of this sort of stark, almost contrast to that style here?
Yeah, I know that's your favorite theme, Ruthan Badd. So, you know, when AP was talking, I was remembering this quote from Thomas Carlyle, who had tendencies, especially later in life, toward fascism. But he said that democracy is despair of finding any heroes to govern. So, it's true. What you have here in this story that we're discussing, and I think you could broaden it to the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach stories in general. I agree with what you said in the beginning, Ruthan Badd, which is that this is a not flattering view of humanity that we have here. We have, for our heroes, if you will, the most insightful characters are a pair of necromancers who kill people and you know, so and the societies that they come across. I mean, the place is called Quaint, of all things. Like I said before, I mean, Erikson gets almost Dickensian here with his naming. And it is anything but quaint. It is frightening, the human capacity to otherize, I guess, to use a buzzy word there. And I think you both, of course, know what I mean by that. To put oneself in the place of judge, right? And not just judge, but often prosecutor and jury and judge, and put someone away. And this is a thing that has existed for time immemorial, for as long as humanity has been around. So I think that nobody writes satire, though, without hope for humanity. You mentioned Jonathan Swift earlier, AP, and you know, there's often a discussion whether or not Swift was a misanthrope, right? I don't think he was. Why bother to write a story at all if you think humanity is hopeless? So my take on that is, yes, we see the worst of humanity portrayed in often a hilarious manner, but I don't think people like Stephen Erikson would bother to write if they thought we were completely hopeless, if there weren't some point to this to say, okay, well, we can be pretty damn ridiculous sometimes in some pretty stupid ways, and we can be awfully proud. We can lack humility in the way we treat other people. But this is, in a way, a fun way of perhaps gently reminding the reader not to be this way. So I kind of like that. So I see Satire as fundamentally an author having some hope for humanity. I guess that's my response to that.
I like how there's this meta element of, on the one hand, the whole the collapse of Quaint reflects very poorly on human nature, and Bauchelain keeps pointing that out. But at the same time, Erikson, there's also this meta element of Erikson proving that with us, because he makes us laugh at all kinds of horrible things. I mean, when that explosion happens and there's cattle cartwheeling up in the sky, and even the sailors can see it, I was on the floor. There were so many moments here which were so morbid, and there's this one scene where one of the sort of the wardens or whatever, who used to be a prostitute, is now up on the 3rd floor, and she's looking for clients, and she's holed up there with the guy who has a bunch of pigs, and she's like, you know what, let me ignore the pigs, okay, this one's on the house, and she's ready to go to town on him, and he says, oh, you know what, my pigs might get jealous, I can't do that. So there are so many jokes here that I shouldn't laugh at, that I still do. So Erikson proves that human beings are shit, and then he proves that we are shit as well. AP, what do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't quite have phrased it that way. I think one of the types of humor that humanity has played with is the idea of transgressing taboo, and we take the taboo and we make these transgressive moves and put stories in it or make jokes about it, and that is the humor. It's that kind of uncomfortable, you're laughing at something that is wrong, and that has been a style of humor for as long as there's been literature. I think one of the earliest recorded jokes or something that they found inscribed in, I think it was in ancient Greek, had to do with a woman farting in a man's lap. And that you look at that and go,
hilarious.
Did a 5-year-old today think that joke up?
I thought it was funny.
But we have this transgression of taboo as a source of humor, and then it raises the idea of, well, this is the taboo. What is the taboo? And it starts you thinking about that in the back of your head, and then you have to consider that different societies, different cultures, have different taboos. Sex and attitudes to sex are not consistent across the entirety of the planet. Right. Attitudes to, say, fecal matter are not consistent across the entire planet. And so we have these different societal or cultural taboos. And when you're making fun of them, when you're creating this kind of humor about it, that plays into it, that sometimes it's a taboo that you cannot cross, and other times you're just giggling at it because you understand it.
Yeah. It's amazing how many words we have for sex and how many words we have for poop,
Everybody poops, Philip.
Everybody does. And the more words there are in a language for a certain thing, then that certain thing must be awfully important, even if it's taboo. So yeah.
I mean, there's literally a woman in the story who kills her husband because he doesn't put the toilet seat up. I mean, as he doesn't clean the urine, whatever. I mean, you can't get any better than that. The next thing I want. Sorry?
The spatter. I think that's the way you refer to the spatter. Yeah.
Oh, I just call it the beautiful yellow spot. But anyway, the next question that I want to ask. Come on, guys. These are the Bauchelain books. We've got to get in the spirit of the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach book. So, but on a sort of more, go on, AP.
I was about to say, before we go on, can I please remind everyone that Philip and I have doctorates in literature? just so you know,
Yeah.
as we carry on talking about urine patterns on toilets. Just wanted to put that out there.
This
Wait,
is
your
the
PhD is not in urinology, AP?
Oh God. I mean, AP probably has that opinion of a couple of books that he had to read, that he would have rather kind of studied urine. But you know, what I want to ask you guys, the next thing I want to ask you guys was a much more sort of family-friendly one, which is Reese, because this is where Reese, to use the earlier example we used in your video, Philip, this is where Reese kind of shows a little bit of Jeeves and a little less Baldric, I guess, where he's just sent in there as an agent of chaos by Bauchelain, and Reese actually does the job. I was very impressed with Reese in the story. What did you guys think about him?
Yeah, doesn't it? Bauchelain even says, "Oh hell, we didn't even need to raise the dead. You had already taken care of this, right?"
All this society needed was a little push.
Yeah.
But I think one of the interesting things is he does it basically by accident. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't anything that he was doing. Mansi the luckless lucks into the answer.
I mean, AP, I will have to defend my boy Mansi here. While it is true that the handkerchief with the drugs was a complete accident, the way he talked himself into that position, where he deals with the first woman who encounters him, and he then pretends to be the first prophet, and he faints and wakes up and starts proclaiming things. I mean, I do have to defend him there, AP. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, you have a point. He's not stupid. One of the things I love about the character of Emanciper Reese is he basically, anytime Erikson needs a character to have a skill, Emanciper Reese has it. He was a sailor, he was a soldier, anytime something comes up in the story, it was Emanciper Reese has done it and trained in it and has at least some working knowledge of it. He is literally the Swiss Army knife of people.
Yeah, he's a handy fellow.
The sailors in the next story that we'll discuss, the Storm Riders or whatever, they even say Mansi the Luckless has swum out of a lot more wreckages than even us.
Yeah. Handy fellow. I wanted to point out too, because you made me think of it, Ruthan Badd, is the moment we get the handkerchief, which sets off everything, when Invet Loath, again, how Dickensian can you be with a name, goes ballistic. And did you guys notice this? I'm sure you did. It's on page 291 of my edition, which is the collected of all three of these. But there's one sentence. This one sentence goes on for this whole page and this whole page of Invet Loath on a rampage. It's one sentence. It's a huge, long paragraph that consists of one sentence. But I won't read the whole thing, but it's just so well done. And it's just breathless, and it just carries you along, and he's slaughtering, and he's delivering righteous judgment on all of these sinners. And then it ends with this oomph and this wonderful punctuation here on it when he runs into whatever it is, corpulence or
vice.
Yes, whatever vice that is. And it's just so well done. I have to just
I'm glad you described asphyxiation by armpit pimples as so well done. I mean, that's music to my ears, Philip. Thank you.
I mean, don't you think, okay, as much as we talk about not being judgmental and not being, there are certain moments where you're kind of like, yeah. When he dies with his head in the armpit of what is it? Nausea.
The demon, one of the demons, and there are worms and crevices and pus that's leaking out of the pimples. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the Jabba the Hutt type, figure here, and he dies by asphyxiating in the armpit of the. He was trying to kill this individual too, by the way. It's a self-defense, right? So
absolutely, self-defense by armpit asphyxiation. Yes.
Armpit pimples popping in his mouth and all of that. I mean,
AP is enjoying this conversation so much, by the way.
Hopefully you're not having dinner soon.
Well, see, the thing is, I really enjoy the conversation about, yes, the modernist technique of using one long extended sentence and extending it long past to reflect the pace and style and the interior monologue of a character, and it's fitting with pace. Oh yes, technical aspect of writing. Now let's talk about armpit pimple pus drowning someone.
That has to be the
what am I
tagline
doing
for the
with my
story.
life?
Brilliant. And what's even more interesting about that is that once all of that happens, the sort of the debauchery that sort of quaint devolves into is so exquisitely described. Now, once it's morbid, of course, but because they have no meat there. So one of the characters just casually says, "What do you think happened to all the dogs and the horses and whatever? Do you see any of them here celebrating with the rest?" Because they're all feasting. They're all feasting on meat. And one great scene that I always remembered, which stayed with me even while reading that, is when Emancipor and that head paladin or whatever walk in and they see the actual healthy dead. So the healthy dead are obviously dead people who had a healthy death and who are sort of stored in these glass upright coffins, while the unhealthy ones are they have a stake driven through them or whatever. They are on a pike outside on the city walls. So this guy, the paladin, even explains that most of them died by constipation. And Reese is like, "What's going on?" And he says, "Yes, because earlier when our morticians used to open up their bellies, they would find disgusting meat, and it would just be it would be gross. But now we just find grass. Now it's all just tangled up in grass, and they've died of constipation." And Reese says, "Oh yeah, now just citizens and cows." And here's where the punchline comes. And the paladin turns around and he says, "You will be surprised how similar the two are." So in one scene, there is a joke mocking the whole veganism, carnivore, herbivore thing. There's something mocking this whole idea of the healthy dead and self-righteousness. And Reese now stuck with who is clearly a madman. And for it to then be brought back with, I mean, the sort of the Blackadder season 4 analogy is perfect, right? Especially that last episode where even though it's funny, you have these butterflies in your stomach and you're kind of uneasy the entire time because you know that these guys are going to go out there to die. And this story, while this story is a lot more lighthearted, there are those small moments that put the brakes, especially, I mean, think about it. They all die of constipation. That is hilarious. And then a small line like that, which once again tells us about the nature of power. I just love that kind of, I'm rambling on, but I just love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that the people deep in their hearts really preferred things under Necrotus when it was just an ordinary corruption and life was, you know, this kind of tyranny of perfect health and all of that is far worse to deal with than just ordinary corruption, right?
They say something like he's corrupt and lazy. We liked him well enough.
Yeah, I love that line. We liked him well enough. Yeah.
AP?
It comes back to the exaggeration that we have of when you take a position and it is then enforced. And then once that becomes the norm, you go, well, how's it improved then? Oh, well, we have to push it further and further and further. So the idea where a lot of governments have issued guidance on, you know, you should be eating at least X amount of fresh fruit and vegetable a day. And everyone's like, oh, how can the government say that to us? And then if you actually talk to a nutritionist, they go, yeah, you should be eating more than that anyway to get all of the fresh vitamins and nutrients you need. But if a government then said, okay, it is now legal, that there's a law, you must do this. And you go, okay, so everyone does that. And it's, well, actually, now we're going to increase it. And you have to brush your teeth twice a day. Well, no, now it's going to be 3 times a day. And when you brush your teeth, it has to be done for at least 5 minutes. And you have to use this type of toothpaste. That you can get into this cycle where once you start laying down the law and saying you have to do X, then the only place to go is more and more and more regulation on it. And then people will argue, oh, well, you never said I couldn't do that thing. So a new law comes in to forbid that. And then, oh, but you didn't say I didn't do that thing. So if you think in university syllabi for undergraduates, don't plagiarize. it seems fairly straightforward. Don't plagiarize. I want to see your work. And so you get an essay submitted. That's a block quotation from start to end of someone else's essay, that they've then attributed. And you go, that's not plagiarism. I gave you the reference for it. So you go, don't plagiarize and don't do a giant block quotation. And so the next time they submit an essay that has 3 block quotations. And you go, right, it has to be at least 60% your own work. And suddenly you start getting to all of these things instead of being able to trust people, to be, to have common sense, to be moderate, to do these things. And so when we see this, someone going, yeah, it's a good idea to have a balance, to have a healthy diet. Yeah, that is a good idea. Okay, so I'm not going to make you have a healthy diet. And it's a good idea to have some exercise. So I'm going to make you have some exercise. Well, that's not enough exercise. You have to have more. And that's what we see exaggerated here.
It's certainly a very Orwellian society. I love those parallels as well. The last question I want to ask you guys about the story was, what did you think of Bauchelain, Korbal Broach, and Rees as a dynamic? Because this is the first story in this collection that takes place somewhat after Memories of Ice, to a certain extent, as in they've been together for about 4 or 5 years at this point, whereas the other 2 in this collection are when they just got together. There are these small scenes between Bauchelain and Emanciper Rees that I like. There's one where Emanciper's looking at her. He says he feels like a caterpillar or something like that, and Bauchelain says, don't worry, they will turn into a butterfly as well, and they have a small moment. There are these little tidbits here and there in their dynamic, which seem to have gone further along than where we started with. So what did you guys think about that?
I guess the relationship with Bauchelain, between him and Emanciper Rees, is fascinating, and it's fun, like you say. I'm curious though, I don't feel like Mansi has really gotten used to Korbal Broach at all. There might be just one person who is used to Korbal Broach, and that's Bauchelain.
Oh, can you, Philip?
I mean, Bauchelain seems pretty comfortable with him. Maybe his mother, I don't know. Is Korbal Broach's mother around?
Probably in a box.
What's that?
She's probably in one of the boxes, not necessarily all in one piece.
It's one of her hearts that's beating and one of her lungs that's pumping in and out. Yeah.
Oh, and it's in the child. Yeah. Yeah. So I that's always going to be maybe a mystery. Because we are more often seeing things from Emanciper's perspective. I feel like Korbal Broach is forever a mystery, whereas the Bauchelain relationship is definitely warmed up considerably, as you say, and there's a kind of nice rapport that goes on there as well. Although I still think Emanciper has a healthy fear of Bauchelain as well.
One of the things that I find, you hit the nail on the head, that the relationship between them is significantly developed here. But you even see signs of it earlier on, because in Blood Follows and in Leaves of Laughter's End, Bauchelain likes talking to Emanciper Rees. He doesn't have long conversations with Korbal Broach. That's not what Korbal Broach is interested in. But he is clearly comfortable with Korbal Broach. But here he has someone who will listen to him. And we have these moments where he almost treats Emanciper Rees like a human and not just a tool. But again, Bauchelain is evil. Like, there is no sugarcoating that. If you were thinking in old D&D terms, you might say that Bauchelain is neutral evil and Korbal Broach is chaotic evil. But we're still definitely evil. It's not that you go, oh well, he's not too bad. No, he's still evil.
Yeah.
But we have these. I think you almost have Bauchelain enjoying the fact that he has an audience. Not necessarily that he's particularly interested all the time in what Emanciper Rees has to say, but he enjoys having an audience in which he can say something too.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And as you were saying that, the one thing that sort of kept going back to my mind, once again, I'm sorry, AP, for having to kind of play the devil's advocate here. But there is a funny line here where he says, in this book, Bauchelain says to Rees, where he says, you know what? The fact that we're doing something good here, that does kind of give me some enthusiasm, because usually what they get involved in has no positive moral purpose. But Bauchelain, through his construction of the whole human nature argument, has now established that what they're doing is for the benefit of humanity. And he even kind of ironically says, the fact that we're doing this for a good job, that does make me feel better. So there is a heart in there, AP. Come on.
But is he saying that he's enjoying it, that he's feeling good about it because it is a good thing to do?
No.
Or is it because it's novel? He hasn't ever done that before.
Yeah.
He
says it's because they are matching wits with the genius, because he figures that someone who pulled this off, the whole idea of benevolence as a form of tyranny, that is a genius. And what a perfect, juicy anticlimax, because you could argue that all three books kind of have anticlimactic endings, and that's a part of what makes the humor work. That is all just a rush and then everything sort of this one. And the fact that this guy is on some kind of giant elliptical machine, which itself to me is a parody of all these people who are obsessed with spending time in the gym, and that he's just dead there. The guy's been dead the entire time, and this big nemesis that Bauchelain was looking forward to, his own self-righteousness in terms of fitness, was the end of him. They didn't need Bauchelain there. Yeah.
But also the idea of a fitness machine that clearly works itself. How can that make you fit? If it's going on its own without your input, that's not a fitness machine.
Right.
And then you have even like the social satire of this guy created a system that was self-perpetuating, which obviously we see in the machine, but that's the system that was created. So the system itself is the thing that is the tyrannical overlord of society. And then you think of the systems in which we live in the real world and how there isn't a grand conspiracy running them. These systems run themselves. We have created self-perpetual machines, these systems that control us.
So it's
Absolutely.
a big metaphor. We're all strapped in the machine now.
Oh, always. I mean, listen, Philip, speak for yourself, right? I'm living in the Eastern Hemisphere here. We aren't really as sort of trapped in your machinistic life. Guys, I can speak about this story all day long. Do you have anything to add? Because I feel like no matter which path I go down, I can just talk about this all day. So
yeah, I just want to thank you, Ruthan Badd, for having me and also, of course, AP on in this conversation. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, ever since I learned that these were your favorites. So thank you so much, and I've gained some real nice appreciation and insights here. So this was a lot of fun.
My honor. Thank you.
And I would just like to add, thank you so much, Ruth. And I really, really do appreciate coming on. You have put up some amazing analysis videos, and you know, like from the stuff that I do, that's the kind of bread and butter of how I really enjoy literature. So I know I can turn to your channel and see this, and it is absolutely incredible. A great honor to be talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. That is music to my ears. Thank you so much. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you. Should I just hit the stop button?
Yep. Stop. Yeah.